Welcome to the realm of magic and mystery, classic horror and sci-fi. You are now entering the House of the Unusual podcast with your hosts, Eddie and Joe.
Hey, Joe, how are you?
Hey, Eddie, how's it going?
Everything's pretty good. How about you?
Not too bad. Just hanging in there with everything going on.
Yeah, this is now our second podcast. The first one looks like to be pretty successful. There's quite a few hits on it. So what do we got to discuss today, Joe?
Wow, there's definitely some huge news going on in the comic book world with the layoffs at DC Comics, and they're looking at it. Kind of looks like they're looking to restructure their entire the entire way that they do comic books, going more towards digital, while only keeping some of their major titles. Like I heard, Batman's going to be their number one title that they're going to really push, followed by Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Aquaman. All these characters that pretty much have a TV show to fall back on or a movie to fall back on. So it's a huge shakeup, and I know between DC Comics and HBO, which is all under, there's about 800 people that got fired this past week. So some pretty big news going on.
Yeah, I read something about the DC this morning, and it said something like they laid off a total of 600 people, and I think some of the people in the DC universe there were kind of upset that they took out a lot of the creators of a lot of the storylines, So it makes it harder because now they have to do more than they did before. What I find very interesting about that is why they would actually lay off that many people. Now, am I correct in saying that DC was bought out by Disney? Is that correct?
No, that was Marvel that was bought out by Disney.
Yeah, but wasn't DC also in the works of being bought out by Disney as well?
I don't know if there was something a few years back where Disney was looking at them as well, but no, Warner Brothers still has control over the DC universe, and like you said, there were 650 layoffs just from DC Comics alone. The rest were from their affiliate HBO. So it's definitely a huge shakeup. You got to kind of wonder, if Disney did get a hold of DC, would this have happened, or would the company expanded a little bit more?
Well, you have me thinking now when you said that, because if I'm correct, Warner Brothers is part of Disney. See,
I would have to look. I'm at my computer right now, and I could definitely take a look and see. I know Warner Brothers is their own huge company. From what it looks like is that they're their own company, Warner Brothers, and then they have Warner Brothers Pictures, and then they were formerly Warner Brothers Inc. So yeah, they're their own company, and I guess it's because of all this COVID stuff and everything that they're not doing too good. But I kind of think too that I don't know if it's because of all this COVID stuff that's going on, but they're looking to put more into their digital lineup than an actual print lineup.
Well, you see, what's been happening right now is because of the amount of people that are staying home and all this thing with the COVID, a lot of people think that or should I say that there's going to be a lot of people watching. So they might be thinking that it'd be the way to go. Instead of having people physically buy a comic book and stuff, they can read it online. But there's one problem, a major drawback in that. A while back when they were trying to, create, let's go back in the early 2000s when ebooks were started to go out in the public. And they said it was the wave of the future, and they started coming out with this e-readers. And to be honest with you, it never caught on. Even to this day, the print book is still stronger than the actual ebooks. And because of that, I don't really know how people, because here's an example. if you take, and I don't care if you have the paper white, Amazon paper white, or whatever you take, if you take at any given time a book, an ebook, and you start reading it, it's going to get to the point where it's going to be like your eyes hurt, you get tired. It's not the same as reading a physical book.
Absolutely.
And for that reason, I don't know if that's the right move, to be honest with you. But then again, but I could have sworn, and the more I think about it, I do know as a fact, because when you go over to Disney World and stuff, there is there's like the Warner Brothers, there's a Warner Brothers Studios, Warner Brothers, they have things there. And that's mostly owned by Disney, or they have a stake in it. I know that with, Disney bought out many years ago Harvey Publications, which published Casper, Richie Rich, all those famous Felix. I don't know if not Felix the Cat. There was another company altogether, but they what I'm saying is, little by little, they got rid of Casper. You hardly see Casper anymore because they're trying to, of course, make excuse me, Disney or Mickey Mouse a stronger candidate, I guess, for the media. But
I could definitely see, because Warner Media, they own all of that, Warner Brothers and DC. So if they're not doing well, I could definitely see them, looking out to try to sell DC, and it would definitely, I think it would definitely be a good move if DC went to Disney. Now, especially for Disney, because then they would control both of the two superpowers, to say of the comic book world, DC Comics and Marvel Comics, and they would just be a kind of an unstoppable powerhouse, in the comic book and in the movie realm. Because as you've seen over the years, the DC movies that have come on haven't been really successful, especially when you compare them to the Marvel movies. However, DC's comic books have been a little bit better than the Marvel comic books, and I guess that's a point you can argue to no end. But if Disney was somehow able to acquire both, I mean, they would be unstoppable, and we might even see some good DC movies finally, hit the theaters.
Well, the thing is that the whole thing. See, basically, DC. What makes DC so powerful? It has Superman, it has Batman, it has, a lot of the famous heroes. But then, Marvel has Hulk, Spider-Man, Thor. So you know what I'm saying? It's both. It's always been a competing thing, but of course, I think Superman has always been one of the most popular among most people. He was my favorite as a kid. In fact, he's so popular. It's actually a museum. My brother, who's a big time Superman collector. In fact, he's got 2 storage units filled with Superman figures and Superman stuff. He sent me a photograph of an entire building that's a Superman museum. So, that I think is one of the main characters that Disney is not Disney. I'm sorry, the DC is actually always going to try to promote. It'll be one of the strongest, even Batman, like you said. But I could see Superman being a bigger. Now, the only thing I could say about Superman, though, is that, let's be honest, every single Superman film out there that has come, from the first one, which was not bad. I loved the first one with Christopher Reeves way back in the day. But the thing that I thought just was a little bit too far-fetched is in the end, where Lois Lane gets killed by the car accident I think she was in. And then he starts spinning the earth the opposite way by flying real fast around it. That kind of, I think, destroyed the movie for me.
Yeah, that was one of the parts of and I loved the movie, but I didn't understand that. He went back and, he started flying around the world and turned it the opposite direction, and somehow it, reversed.
It went back in time, yeah.
Yeah, that kind of lost me in the movie. But even over the years, and even the more contemporary Superman movies, some of those have lost me too. Superman, in my eyes, always stood for truth, justice, and the American way, and he was always like this beacon of light whenever something was dark. And these more contemporary Superman movies kind of held him in a darker light, kind of what they did to Batman, after the TV show in the 60s. Batman went, completely 180 and just became this dark, brooding character. Well, it almost seems like they're doing that with Superman, where they're making him this darker character. If you look at the movies, they've changed up his costume. They've made his costume darker. They've took the S off the cape, got rid of the curl. So you had this, hometown boy, farm boy, and they've completely revamped him into almost like this darker character. And I don't like the way that goes. Some people like that, but that's just definitely not for me.
I agree with you. They've changed the character, but you know what though? Even when they've tried, I think in modern day, because we had 3 Supermans under Christopher Reeves, and the next 2 were okay, but you know what? It was not my favorite film. Is kind of in the sense, if you look at the 1960s with George Reeves, the other Reeves, the original Superman. Original to us. There was one before him, but he was horrible, man. I mean, if you see some of those Supermen when he's flying, you could see a little stick with a Superman going over the clouds. It is so retarded. It's crazy. But George Reeves, when you look at those Superman films, they're very realistic in where it's kind of like for an adult audience. It's not really meant for young kids. It's actually meant for kids, but it played out to both genres. And I think I grew up watching that Superman, and that's always what I expected Superman to be like. Okay, so now they come in, Christopher Reeves does the first one. It was really cool. Like when he walks into that restaurant and there's 2 guys bullying him and he punches the guy, and then, he's Superman. So obviously, that was a cool part. I like that part. The only thing, like I said, that killed the film is when he turns the earth at the end of the film. Now,
right.
The next 2 films are okay, not that great. Then they come out and do another 2 or 3 films of Superman. And the last one, I think, was called The Man of Steel. That movie in particularly, I'll tell you what made me think, hey, this, my son swears that it's the best film he's ever seen. But when you have a man like Superman punch an individual, and he goes in through like 2 or 3 cars and into the wall and flies across the building, I think that's a little too far, Like, it should be, Superman is strong. He punches somebody, hits a wall, and it stays there. It's not like he goes through the building, And
yeah, here's the thing: if Superman punches somebody that hard that he does all that, the guy's gonna be crushed.
Yeah, I think the movie to me was a piece of junk. I didn't like it at all. But I'm gonna tell you, it was kind of interesting though, with the better, because Superman is the best character, right? I mean, for DC, Batman. When they started doing the Batman films, I gotta be honest with you. There's not any Batman film out there that you could say it's horrible. And when they did like the Dark Knight series, those films were phenomenal, man. I mean, Batman Begins. I love Christian Bale. He's got that voice, whatever. So I think having seen him, especially when he did that movie, I forgot the name of that movie, The Magician or something. That oh gosh, I have it in the tip of my tongue. I forgot. You know what movie I'm talking about? That he plays a magician. He's got a twin brother.
No, I've never seen that.
It's very, very good. I think it's called The Illusionist or something like that. I forgot the name of it right now. But Christian Bale, to me, is the perfect Batman character. I didn't like the other Batmans. I mean, they were okay. I liked them all, to be honest with you. But I think Christian Bale played the best. The point is that it's one of those films that when you look at the whole thing, you go, damn, the film is better than I thought. When the first Hulk came out, a good example, man, that film was so bad. And, I'm a guy that I grew up, my favorite character was Superman, followed by Batman, of course. But then I always liked Spider-Man and the Hulk, And I kind of really liked the Hulk a lot. So when the movie came out, I was anxious to go see it. The movie was so bad that I said to myself, why in the world would I sit 2.5 hours in this film? The second part comes out. I was reluctant to go. I'm like, I'm not going to go. This movie's going to suck like the first one. It's a horrible film. And then I bought a cereal. I forgot what cereal it was. I think it was Cheerios or something, and it had 2 free movie tickets inside the box. I actually went to see the Hulk. I got to tell you, I actually stayed to watch the film twice. Twice. Now, of course, the girl, Mick Jagger's, I think Mick Jagger's daughter was the one that played the, whatever. But I stayed, I fell in love with the character, of course. The girl just like, she was really hot for the film. But I got to tell you the honest truth, though. Overall, the second Hulk, I think, justified the failure of the first. Movies that have come out that, like, for example, when King Kong, how many movies of King Kong can come out? A million. They all, the same thing, same storyline. So you're like, I already saw it. I was reluctant to go see King Kong when it came out. The last one they did. I stayed twice in the film too. It was such an awesome film, so well written, they blew my mind. And
the only King Kong that I guess I have mixed reviews on is the 2005 one by Peter Jackson. It was close to 3 hours long.
That's the one.
Yeah, and the first 2 hours were just like, what the heck's going on? It was just so dragged out, but the last hour was, full of action, and it was a good. I mean, overall, it was a good film. It was just, the first 2 hours just dragged. Now, the one that they did a few years ago, I thought was really good, and they started doing like their shared universe of King Kong with Godzilla. I really liked those movies and the idea of it. I thought they've been really well done. The CGIs look pretty good, so I'm interested to see how they're going to be going with that. And I believe that last one was in 2018.
I believe so, because I loved that particular one. But what I was going to say though is the Godzilla though. There was a Godzilla that came out that they had changed the way Godzilla looked. That was okay. It wasn't. The new Godzilla was a little better, but it didn't blow my mind as what a good film. It's the same way. I mean, my all-time favorite film has got to be Pirates of the Caribbean. And I'll tell you why. There's no person better than Johnny Depp to play that part. And the guy who plays Captain Barbossa, I forgot his name, he killed it. I mean, that's the best pirate film ever that I've seen. Now, here's what I like about it, which I think a lot of guys will probably feel the same way as me, and I'm sure you probably do too. We love anything to do with the sea. The sea is foreboding, it's scary, it has a sense of mystery, a sense of wonder. So when you put in pirate treasure, pirate maps, especially growing up in the 70s, where that was such a popular thing, seeking for buried treasure, and you put together a film that has the pirates, the treasure, the skeletons, okay, the Walking Dead there. I mean, honestly, the first part of that film, I can watch it 20 times and still love it. The second and third were not, there was one that's kind of like a cliffhanger where you're like, what happened? But I got to tell you, though, the whole series for me, even the ones that were not as good as the first, even the last one they did, I loved it. It's such a phenomenal thing that I actually bought each one that came out. I bought 3 copies of the film. Okay, that's how much that I love that film. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. But here's another film. A lot of people say, well, but I got to tell you the truth, though. Johnny Depp, not Johnny Depp. This guy that did Ghost Rider. He did.
Nicolas Cage.
And yeah, Nicolas Cage. I think, I don't know if it was the music in it, I don't know what, but I really enjoy the first Ghost Rider, man.
I thought the first Ghost Rider was a decent popcorn movie. Now I have to tell you a funny story about the second movie, because I don't know if you like the second movie or not, or if you've even seen it.
I have them. I gotta admit though, I do like both films.
Okay, well, let me tell you the story about the second Ghost Rider. So Ghost Rider one of my favorite Marvel characters. You know, when I started really collecting comic books in the 90s, I really got into Ghost Rider, the whole Midnight Suns books and all of that, because, you know, it had the horror aspect to it. So, you know, right up my alley. You know, I loved all the characters. I loved the artwork, the books. So anyways, Ghost Rider movie. I'm like, man, this is going to be good. Like the first one, you know, like I said, good popcorn movie. The second one, it must have took me 4 hours to watch the hour and a half, 2 hour movie, because I kept pausing it and have to take a break because I was just so frustrated with it. I absolutely hated it. So but I said, you know what? I bought the DVD. I'm going to try to trudge through it and make it to the end. And, you know, I kind of wish that I could have got that hour and a half, 2 hours back in my life, but you know, it is what it is. So anyway, a few weeks later, I was playing some Dungeons and Dragons with some friends of mine, and we were talking about the movie. And the one guy goes, you know, I've been wanting to watch the movie. I said, you know what? I said, I have the DVD. I said, I was actually going to take it to my backyard and either set it on fire or shoot it because I hated it so much. I said, but I'll bring it over, you know, next time we meet up. So I brought it over to him. He watched it, and right after that, he gives me a call. He goes, hey, he goes, do you want this back, man? He goes, this was a horrible movie. He goes, I don't even want it in my house. I said, I don't want it. I said, it's yours now. You do whatever you want with it. And he ended up throwing it in his fire pit in the backyard and burnt it.
Wow.
I was so upset with. I was so frustrated with it. I just one of my top 5 movies that I absolutely hate
was the Ghost Rider 2.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, one of my top 5 that I absolutely hate.
I got to admit, maybe it's the fact that I like Nicolas Cage as an actor. I like the Ghost Rider thing, and the second one, you know, it was okay. I enjoyed it the same way. But I got to tell you though, there has been some films. I remember that I went to see one time in the movie theater, and I was never so pissed off from watching that movie that these two comedians, I forgot what it was. I don't know if it was called Wayne's World or something like that. It wasn't Wayne's World. It was like, I forgot the name of the film, but it was horrible, man. And I'm like, wow, there's nothing worse than when you go to see a movie and you know, and then you're like, why did I even spend the money? Especially when you pay $15 to get into a movie theater. You know?
Right. Yeah, $15 plus all the popcorn and candy.
Yeah. You spend like $30, $40 for a piece of junk, and you're like, what the heck? But you know what? I remember, this is kind of funny. It's a story now that we're talking about bad films. When I went to see that movie, which I forgot right now if it's called Wayne's World. It wasn't Wayne's World. It was something else. There was 2 actors, kind of like goofy. One had long hair. The other one, it was way back in the late 90s. I mean, early 2000s. It's when the same time the movie My Cousin Vinny came out, which I had no idea that Fred Gwynn was in it. And I was so pissed off at watching the film that I forced my kid to go and sneak into another movie because I wanted to get my money's worth. That's how pissed off I was. And I went to see My Cousin Vinny. I had no idea what it was. That was a hell of a film, man. That was. I
have to admit, I don't think I've ever watched My Cousin Vinny. I've seen bits and pieces of it, but I never watched the whole movie from beginning to end.
You got to watch it, man. That's a good film. It was hilarious. I mean, Fred Gwynn played the judge, and every time Joe Pesci would say something, so excuse me, how did you pronounce that? And he would, let me tell you, that was such a good film. If you watch it, you're going to enjoy it a lot. Now, one of my all-time favorite films, I'll tell you what they are. I told you already, my favorite is the Pirates of the Caribbean. My second, I would say, has to be probably National Treasure, the first part.
Oh, I love both. Yeah, I love both National Treasure movies. Yeah. I thought those were awesome.
Yeah, I was going to say the second part, I loved it too, because they had all these things you could play in the DVD machine, like additional footage and stuff. Which I also...
Now tell me, don't those movies make you want to, go out and just start,
that's
hunting treasure and looking for secrets and all that.
Well, that's what I was trying to tell you. That's kind of like, well, old guys feel like. I've noticed one thing about guys. Okay, they like horror. They like earth globes. For whatever reason, every time I pass next to an earth globe or a telescope, I feel like buying it, even though I'm never going to use it. But it attracts guys. And somebody said to me one time, this girl told me, she goes, I don't know what it is that every time my husband's on passing, I say, I don't know what it is either, but every time I see an earth globe, I want to buy it just for the hell of it, you know? and it's kind of like it just attracts man, you know? And treasure, pirates. When I go to Florida, I love going to St. Augustine because St. Augustine is the perfect place for somebody like me and you. It has a pirate treasure. It has a pirate museum. It's got the original, one of the only flags they ever found out, or they found, of an actual pirate ship. It's a real flag. I think there's 2 surviving in the entire world. One of them is in St. Augustine. And it so happened, this is an interesting story since we're talking about that. But before I even get into that topic, I'm going to finish the film topic. The other film that I thought was super good, that I like, was Batman Begins. I think it was the first and the last part. I'm not a fan of The Dark Knight. Don't ask me why. I just thought it was not about Batman. It was all about the Joker, all about this, and I didn't like the film. My son says I'm crazy, whatever. I went for opening night. I hate the film. But, you know, another film I was thinking there that I really kind of enjoyed a lot was either National Treasure, like I mentioned that, but right now it just kind of slipped off my head, which is the other film I was going to mention. But anyway, here's a funny story about the treasure thing. A while back, a couple of years ago, I would say probably close to 7 or 8 years ago, maybe a little longer than that, there was those things they call the pirate treasure, they call it pieces of 8, I think it is, or 8 pieces of 8, whatever it is. There's supposed to be a coin found in a famous ship that was discovered called the Antorcha. If you remember that ship, it happened in 2000 and something. And in the middle of the night, they went into where the thing was, and they recovered over $1 billion in gold.
Oh, wow.
Okay, and you can see it in the National Geographic channel. You can watch. Well, anyway, one day I go into this store. It's kind of like a Goodwill store that sells used things. And I see a piece supposedly of this coin from this ship that they were selling. And the asking price was $298. So now I was like, wow, I go to my wife, if that is real, I really like to buy it. Now, this store has on occasions, they have this special where you get like 50% off on certain days of the month. And I waited, and I'm like, man, if I wait, it's gonna sell out. So I got the money, and I did some research before I went and bought it. And I realized in one of the Google searches, I found the name of an individual selling coins from that ship, from that sunken ship they found. And I forgot his name now. I have him on my phone somewhere. But anyway, the guy, when he was young, he was like 19 years old. He was one of the divers. And I was able to call him on the phone. And I spoke to him. And I explained to him what it was that I wanted to buy. And believe it or not, he goes to me, it's a fake. They've been selling fakes. Do not, don't buy it. He says, I can sell you one for like $75. I have a bunch. I'm the only one authorized to sell, other than the guy who found the treasure. The situation is that when, and the reason I told you that story is because I kind of made friends with the guy. Now, it's funny, I haven't talked to him in about a year and a half now, almost a year. And I was kind of looking on my phone here to see if I can remember the name. But anyway, I think his name was Tony, if I'm correct. I go to Florida with my son and daughter, and we go to St. Augustine, and I walk into the treasure museum they have there, the Pirate Museum. And one of the things that I noticed is some of the gold from the Antorcha It's now Antocha is a Spanish name. Is the Antoch, Antchoa, which is like that's the name of the ship anyway. So I go there, and I see the name of the guy who I know. I called him up, and I'm like, "Hey, I see you have your stuff in here." He goes, "Oh yeah, I display most of my stuff in that museum." And it was kind of cool because I hit it on with the manager, and here we are, we're discussing, and I told him I know the guy who you guys displayed the treasure here, and it was perfect for me because I got to go in the back. I got to take photos of all the stuff they had, like up close. I was able to learn the history. I was blown away. It was one of the best vacations I ever had. And the funny thing about this vacation is that it was only 4 days. But let me tell you something. One thing about St. Augustine is that it has everything a person wants. It's got the treasure stuff. It's got the history of pirates. It has the only real castle in North America. Okay, that's the only real castle in North America. And you can go to all this stuff, and it's really cheap. And not this time when I went, I didn't go, but a couple of years ago, because I've been there about 5 or 6 times. This time, they have done so much cleaning up of that town and rebuilding that I promised myself I need to get a house there for retirement. It's the best place in the entire United States. When people go to visit, they go to Daytona Beach, they go to Fort Lauderdale, they go to Miami, and everybody skips it because it's right on the north tip of Florida. It's like about 50 miles south of Jacksonville. And it's a small town. I would say it's about a square mile, 2 square miles. But it's gorgeous. It's a beautiful town where you can buy a house, believe it or not, from $150,000 to $1 million, depending how close you are to the beach. It has this beautiful restaurant called Salt Lake that it has open and indoors, and you can go to the side. It's fantastic, man. The food. To me, it's the perfect town for me to go and vacation in. It's got all the ghost rides. They have the supposedly the Fountain of Youth was there. Right before you get to the Fountain of Youth, the original Fountain of Youth, the historical area where it supposedly was found by Ponce de Leon, there's one road. The street is about maybe 3 or 4 blocks long. And it has they look like weeping willows, the trees, and they cross the road. And when you're walking in there, it looks like you're going to like Lord of the Rings or something like that. For one, 500-600 or maybe 1,000 feet, you drive in the center of that road, and it's fascinating. It's a beautiful, beautiful road. I've never seen anything like it in the country. And then you go, of course, the museum. That's I paid the $7 or $8 to get in, whatever it was, or $14, and there's no Fountain of Youth in there. All there is just a bunch of whatever. But it was a decent thing. But then they have now the Ripley's, believe it or not, building is like it. Here's the thing people don't understand about St. Augustine. St. Augustine is the first founded city in America. It was colonized by Spain, and when it was colonized by Spain and stuff, so everything in there is Spanish style. It has the oldest school. The building still stands, and you could actually see it, go inside the building. It has the oldest house, the oldest everything. And then when you go into the actual, the castle, it's fascinating because you could see inscribed in the walls, a lot of the conquistadors would write into the walls. And now what makes this castle unique is that it's made of crushed seashell. Okay. So the walls are like 4 or 5 feet thick, or even more in some parts, I think. And the cannons are all original and stuff. And when you look at the cannons, it says made 1746 or something like that in Spain, And you can see and read the actual writings on the walls of people that were there hundreds of years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is. Let me tell you. And the best part is, let's say you live in New Jersey like I do. You can drive down there in less than 19 hours. It's not that far because it's the tip of Florida. Now, you go to Miami, you're going to drive 24 because when it says welcome to Florida, you still got like 490 miles to go, Yeah, it's because I remember when I first time I've always been like afraid of flying and stuff. And I drove to Florida a total of 27 times because my whole family's in Florida. My parents, my brother, and my cousins. So going to Florida, the first time, I'll never forget this. I saw welcome to Florida. I was all excited, man. I still needed like 8 hours to go. And I was like, man, wow. But the whole thing is, though, that what's good about St. Augustine is when you go down 95 South and you're going to go to the town, you still got to drive like 10 miles to get to the town because it's right off the highway and it's in the middle of nowhere. It's got a couple of outdoor malls and stuff like that, but like a major mall like we have in New Jersey where there's one every mile, you got to drive like close to 15, 16 miles to get to the closest mall.
Could you imagine being down there in the 1700s with all those, wooden pirate ships,
listen,
docked on the coast or, floating near the coast?
Let me tell you this. When you go in St. Augustine, there is in the center of town, in the old St. Augustine, because it's new and old, in the old town, it's about a mile long, maybe a mile and a half, a walkway where people just walk up and down, and it's filled with souvenir shops. There's a magic shop, which of course I enjoy. There's shops that sell swords. There's shops that sell hats. Shops that sell knights in shining armor. Let me tell you, I'm in heaven, bro. It's like I go there and I just, like, for example, my daughter and my son went into this little kind of like a coffee shop, but it was like a really small, old-fashioned looking, because all the houses there look like really old and stuff, and it had the cozy feeling to it. Man, my daughter bought me this hot chocolate, and they gave it to me in a big giant mug. It looks like one of those soup mugs where you put soup in it, and it had the cream on top. You know that after I drank that coffee, I almost swallowed the mug, bro.
I'm that good, huh?
It was so good. What I regret is that the next day I said I got to go for a second one, and it was like $5. It wasn't cheap, but they were closed. So I had to leave, and I'm like, oh my God, this is insane. But what I got to tell you though, Joe, honestly, they make their money mostly on ghost rides. There's a ghost ride to the cemetery of the oldest cemetery in the world. In the United States, they have the Ripley's Believe It or Not ghost ride. They have a ghost ride for almost every part of town. And
now, see, that would be something that would interest me down there. I would love to go on the different ghost rides, and not only just to see the history of the city, but it's a ghost ride. I mean, maybe you might see a ghost or some kind of spooky specter, somewhere off in the distance. You never know.
In the center of town, right across the street from the castle, about a block or two away from there, because it's a really small town. You can I could say you could probably walk the whole damn town in about an hour or less. There's a cemetery there, and the tombstones, I'm looking at them. It was like 1822, 1755. I'm like, what?
Oh wow!
I mean, and the tombstones are like you can hardly almost even read the inscription. That's how old they are. But I got to tell you, though, this is the funny thing. My daughter hated it, man. She goes down there because, of course, kids never collect what the parents like. My son and me were in heaven. My son loved everything. He's enjoying. My daughter goes down there, and we go, and the first time we get there, we stay in my uncle's house, and he's got 3 huge dogs, right? My cousin was actually staying over, and they had 3 huge dogs. So my daughter touches one of the dogs, and she must have touched her eye, so she winds up getting pink eye, right? So here we are for 5 days, and she spent 3 days with pink eye, a major cold.
Oh, man.
She got like the craziest allergy or cold. And so she was suffering from the point we went in to the point where the last words I said to her, she goes to me, I will never, ever go back to that place again with you.
Taking it back to, pirate ships and, treasure and all that. have to tell you a story. When I was younger, probably about 6 or 7 years old, my dad had these old encyclopedias on pirates. And I distinctly remember, St. Augustine being, mentioned there, among some other places, but it was just the artwork and the information was real intriguing. When I was young, I probably didn't really understand much of it, but I liked seeing the photos and seeing, these pirates on some kind of island or beach, burying treasure, X marks the spots, and seeing all these pirate ships, out in bay, which I'm guessing if you stood on the beaches of St. Augustine in, 1700s, all these old style pirate ships would be out there. But anyways, that got me thinking when I was, 6, 7, 8 years old, there could be treasure in my backyard or in the, the little wooded area next to my house. So I went out and I my little shovel, my parents' little gardening shovel, and I would just go somewhere and start digging, and just to see if I would find the treasure chest, and I would dig down, a few inches. Nope, no treasure chest there. And I'd go somewhere else and keep digging, and no treasure chest there. And, that really got me interested in, the pirate maps and the pirate ships and that whole, the whole culture of it. I guess through, watching all these movies, like Pirates of the Caribbean and all that, it really romanticizes
the love of the love of adventure and stuff.
Right.
I was going to tell you, Joe, when I was in school, back in grammar school, I was like maybe in the 3rd grade, 2nd grade. That treasure map that I sell on House of the Unusual, I saw some kid with it, and I was trying to look at the damn treasure map, and he wouldn't lend it to me, And I always wanted that treasure map, but of course, when you're 6, 7, you don't know how to get it. When I finally was able to get it, I was in my 20s, And of course, I've loved it so much that I bought several hundred of them. To me, it was like the ultimate pirate treasure map. But, one thing I was going to say, early in the 70s, I used to watch In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy. And one of the things that I saw one time is that he had a special on the Oak Island treasure from Nova Scotia. And I fell in love with that Oak Island treasure, and I always wanted to go up there. And the fact that I'm only like 6 hours away from there, maybe less, always wanted to. And then when the History Channel had the episode, The Curse of Oak Island, I've been following it from season 1. The reason I'm so attached to it is the fact that it brings back my childhood, because I was one of those, like Rick, the guy who does that particular show, the two brothers, the Laginas. He read that when he was little too, and I can relate to him because I had the same feeling with that treasure thing there. And I always wanted to find treasure and stuff. And it's always intrigued me. In fact, when I had my magic shop that I opened up in 1989, I had it for about 2-3 years, give or take, I think. And one of the things I wanted to do back then, but of course, before the internet, it was kind of hard and stuff. I wanted to start some type of expedition, like in search of Bigfoot or, in search of the Sasquatch. And because I've always been intrigued by that. Now, even though I'm kind of skeptical of the existence of any of that stuff, but it's always been so fun, man. I grew up building robots. I grew up with trying to make a laser gun, watching Lost in Space, and those are the things that bring back our, my memories, my childhood memories that I love today. But right now, they've actually made the Oak Island treasure thing last for almost 8 years now, 8 seasons, which is amazing because they drag it out really good. And I still say, you know what? I'm going to skip the show. Then I find myself glued to the television trying to make up the lost episodes, even though that sometimes they're not even showing anything, But it comes back to the fact that, you know what, Joe? No matter what you do, we as human beings will always want to remember our childhood, remember how much fun it was, because it's a lot different than today, and now with the COVID going on and stuff, a lot of people kind of reminiscing in the past, even more than before.
Well, now's a perfect time, when a lot of people are at home, for them to start using their imagination, to start getting, with their kids or their nieces or nephews, and start helping them use their imagination to start, using stuff around the house to, make, we have Halloween coming up, grab a balloon and, a garbage bag or something and make a spooky ghost, or, grab a white sheet and poke some holes in it and, put it on them and chase each other around as ghosts. Start using your imagination to do stuff. You don't have to always go to a store and buy something or rely on technology. Everything around the house, could become its own adventure, I guess. It was when I was young, and, sometimes, I find myself still doing that. I'd like to still do all the monster models and everything. And I, looking around them on my shelves right now, and, you just kind of use your imagination with them on some, different scenarios and, different storylines. And, that's kind of what it's all about. And I think people should start getting back to that a lot more.
In as we close now, I'm going to tell you something very interesting. I was actually thinking about it earlier today. I've always had a habit when Halloween would come, I would go to the stores and I'd start buying all the Halloween stuff that attracts me. Anything that's monster related, robots, skeletons that dance. And I was thinking to myself, now with the COVID, I wonder if a lot of the companies are going to try to produce new items. What I used to do, and I'll tell you a trick I used to do a while back, Joe, I would go to Walmart and I would put on layaway Halloween stuff, and then you had 30 days to pick up, and I pick it up 10, 11 days after Halloween, and I would get it for 75% off. But I guess
definitely. Yeah, I know that there's a few stores that already started putting out their Halloween stuff, but I usually I usually wait till the day after and go grab stuff for 50, 75, 80% off.
Yeah, well,
stock up for the next year.
Yeah, but you see, Walmart got smart to it. They don't let you put a layaway anymore Halloween stuff, and but I'll tell you what, though, honestly, I wound up they came out with this huge 6-foot, a couple of years ago, a 6-foot butler. It moved the head. The head looked just like Uncle Fester. And I don't know if you know which I'm talking about. And it would say, "Good evening." And the head would move to the right, and the eyes and all that stuff. They were $99 each. So I put 3 of them on layaway. I got them for like $15. Nice. Not 50, they were like $25 each, and I got them, a couple. I've had them for years. I had one of them, but they look really creepy, man. It's like something you put in your living room. They'll say, you go, "Oh my God, what's that?" It'll scare you.
Well, I was kind of disappointed. A few years ago, Target, they had a Universal Monster line of Halloween items, and of course, when I found out, I went there and bought every one that was available, and they were selling out pretty quick. They had a giant mummy's head. They had some little figures of the Mummy, Frankenstein monster, Creature from the Black Lagoon, and there were some other little Frankenstein things where he was by the windmill. You press the button and the windmill goes, and a few other different ones. And I kept checking, every week, and they weren't getting restock or anything. So I bought what I could, and I figured, okay, the next year, maybe they'll have more of the products or some different ones. And like I said, that was about 2 or 3 years ago, and they still haven't done any more Universal Monster Halloween items. So I don't know if they just, got the rights to it for that year, but it was selling good. I mean, they were sold out of everything. Yeah. So it's kind of weird that they wouldn't, renew the license to get it for the, the next year and so on.
The problem with Universal stuff, I'll tell you right now what it is when you buy Universal Monster stuff, the thing that really maintains its value heavy duty are the ones from the 70s and 60s. You'll buy Universal Monster stuff nowadays, and you'll see 5 years from now, it's kind of still selling at the same price because It's so much mass produced. I myself did the same thing you did. I actually bought all the stuff in Target. I even opened the credit card because I spent $300 buying all this. I bought the TV set that was like a haunted TV set. I bought the books, and I've been buying and buying. But think about this: when you buy for 30 plus years, and you're buying every Halloween, that's where right now I'm like, what the hell am I doing with all this stuff, man? Just today I went to get a friend who's going to be in a future show. he asked me, he wanted a pair of the Aqua Specs that are inside the Mail Order Mysteries book. They were produced by the people that make the X-ray glasses, Transscience Corporation, Harold Vanderhut.
Right.
And I was kind of sad when I found them because I had 2 copies of them, and I think I sold one for like $100 and some. And here I am with just 1 copy left, and I promised I'd give it to him. So it doesn't really matter because, they're the Aqua Specs. They're not the X-ray glasses or the Hypno Specs. And, he really wanted, so I guess he got them, I'm just going to
I got a affinity for the X-ray glasses.
Hey, so. you know what? Now, coming to think about that, I'm going to have to get to you one of the originals I found today, like 4 or 5. I mean, I have over 20 of them, I think. And when I'm saying originals, are the ones that they have the plastic frames. Not the.
You see, I've been looking online for some originals, and man, they're tough to find. And if you do find them, people, want an arm and a leg, and your firstborn for one of them, and it's crazy, what people are charging for some of these vintage items.
Well, what we did here is my man here. He name is Todd. I think he sent me today an interesting box, which is really funny though because he bought from me the 7-foot Ghost a few weeks ago, and it took him a while to get it for some reason, and it was really, really funny because he writes me back and says the Ghost is still not here, and then he writes me an email saying, "What a ripoff!" He says, "Just as in the 70s, I order a Ghost to scare my family and friends, and instead I get a balloon, a plastic, and some string." He said, "What a ripoff. I should call you, instead of the House of the Unusual, the House of Unusable." and then he writes in the bottom, "I love it and thanks for the memories and all that and stuff." I found the letter so funny. I actually printed it out, And now he had the original Hypnocoin that was sold by American Circle Corp in the book that I never really actually got as a kid. I bought the 25 lessons from them, but not the Hypnocoin. Like I do sell and reproduce that same pamphlet, but the one that says American Circle meant a little something to me. And there was one on eBay that sold last year for 120, and accidentally I lost it because I was in work at the time and I missed it by 2 minutes, which I was so pissed off about it. But anyway, he had one and he sent me his copy. He goes, "Here, this is a gift for you." And when the box, I haven't opened it yet, but it says, "To Eddie Guevara, care of the House of the Unusable." And I said that was hilarious, And I know in there he has the thing, so that's why I said he's going to get the glasses, because growing up, I saw the glasses in Johnson Smith catalog. Of course, they were there all the time, and they show a guy in a fishing boat looking into the water. And they are made by the same people that make the X-ray glasses, Transscience. But to be honest with you, I really didn't care for them because I got them when I bought my magic shop by accident. I bought them, and they're carded. It's not something I care for, to be honest with you. So I'm going to let him have it, and he's going to be super happy when he gets it. I also found a couple of very interesting stuff. I found an original electric shocking book. It shows, as I said to you one time, I had a major fire that destroyed 3 storage facilities or 3 storage bins that I had filled with collectibles. And this book is kind of like survived that fire, and it has some little bit of water stain on top, but it still holds its beautiful artwork, and that's what makes the packaging on that, I also found something that was really fascinating. I found my original Hypnocoin, and I'm going to send you a photo of this, Joe, because it's going to blow you away, because it's actually different from all the Hypnocoins I've ever seen. Including,
oh, really?
Yeah, it's different. And I showed Todd a picture. He's like, "Oh," and I said, "Todd, this is the one I bought as a kid." I actually opened up a box today that I did videotape for a couple of seconds to put it on YouTube, how I opened it. But this box I haven't opened for like probably 35, 40 years. And it was interesting because it said old jokes, and that's where the glasses were. And I figured that, but then I realized that the second pair that I had, I think I sold on eBay way back for like $100 and some, like way back. And I stayed with the one pair and sold the second, unless it's going to surprise, it's going to be somewhere else, but I doubt it because I kept them together, you know. So that's it. So, you know, Joe, in concluding, we have about 4 minutes left. What else you want to add to the show?
Well, you know, we covered a variety of topics today, going from DC Comics to, you know, Pirates down in St. Augustine and different movies and mail order items. And, you know, one of the takeaways from, you know, this conversation is that I really, you know, took to heart was, you know, talking about DC and how the print medium is really going the way of digital. And, you know, it kind of makes me wonder how that's going to affect the companies,
well,
you know, the comic book shops and the collectability of older comic books.
We'll need to see that. But I'm going to tell you one thing, though. One thing I want to mention right now before we close is that the next show we have we're going to try to probably do a live Zoom podcast. It's going to still be available in the podcast, but it's also going to be available on YouTube and we're going to have Todd on, and I think it's going to be the best podcast ever, man. I mean,
yeah, I definitely want to hear his story about the House of the Unusable.
Yeah,
when he received his ghost.
Yeah, no, this honestly, that's going to be the number one. I really feel that's going to have a good audience. And then, you know, I want to see if I can have Miss Laura Legends from Laura Legends YouTube channel to maybe appear in our show or through podcasts and stuff, because I'm just very intrigued by how a young girl of this generation can be such a great collector, and she reviews toys, and she has a pretty big following. I mean, she's phenomenal. She's fantastic. She's a gem for the collectors today. And, you know, I wanted to interview her. So having said that, Joe, listen, I want to thank you. And I guess both of us, we're here. And until next time, Joe.
Well, everybody out in podcast land, you know, stay tuned. We got some exciting guests coming up. So take it easy, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.